Well, hey guys, welcome to my channel, welcome to this video, and this little, not really a series, but it might be one or two chapters anyway. We're working on doing some 3D printing, okay? And as you guys who watch my channel, you guys know that this is a rather new thing that I've started doing. You guys have seen some stuff in the background sitting on my table behind me. Sometimes I have it on my desk. Sometimes I'm even working on it when I start a video. 3D printed things that I've printed off personally myself with my 3D printers. Now, what printers do I have? I have an Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra, and it's the 12K version, it's not the 16K, okay? So I've got that one. And I have a Haygears Reflex Ultra RS with the pulsing release module, okay? I have that one, okay? It's not the RS Turbo, it's just the RS, okay? So those are the two printers that I have. Would I like to have more? Yes, I would. Do I have the money for it? No, I don't. It's the way it goes. It is a rabbit hole that I have dived into, and yes, it is something that you can really get involved with. And yeah, I want to kind of bring you along on my journey with 3D printing. I want to teach you guys some things that I have learned. It's not, if it's something that you think is way out of your league, that is too complicated, it's too bothersome, don't think that. It's not that hard. I mean, after all, if I could figure out how to do it, you can too. It's not that difficult. Now, I am referring to resin printing specifically. I don't have a filament printer, or FDM as people call it. I don't have one of those. That is a totally different ball game. It's a whole different setup. It's a whole different thing. Although that being said, FDM printers are probably the ones you're thinking of when you think of 3D printing, where you have that plate and you've got this little needle that's going around and building the thing up as it goes, and you get this thing that's building up, and you get that. That's FDM printing, or filament printer. That's what that is. But when it comes to doing things like making the guns for an Ed 209 hand, or making an entire engine for a car, this is resin printing. And that is, you have what they call a vat, or a little tub that's filled with liquid resin, and what they call a build plate goes down into that resin. Some LCD lights light up in a specific pattern that cures one layer of the resin. The plate lifts up and it goes back down, and it lights up again, cures another layer, and over and over and over, and it builds it up upside down compared to an FDM printer. So for example, you have this little gun. This gun is printed upside down, and it slowly prints from this layer down like that. Okay, so if you're looking at this camera, it prints downward like this, okay? Whereas on a filament printer, this sits on a plate and it builds it up. Opposite way. Both work very well, but different purposes, different things. In general, if you're looking for highly detailed things, such as a car engine, or a miniature, or any kind of a figure, you're going to want to use a resin printer, because it can do detail way better than a filament printer. Not that filament printer can't do detail, but it just does a better job. Okay, so as you guys know, I am starting my build on my 1969 Dodge Charger that I'm turning into the General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard. Okay, and so there's a couple of things that I want to do to customize it to make it a little more detailed and a little better, closer to making it a General Lee. One is I want to 3D print an engine for it. I don't want to use the engine out of the kit. I want to print off the base for the CB antenna that goes on the trunk lid, and I want to 3D print the air horns that that car has under the hood to give that horn that distinctive sound that we all know. So I actually have already 3D printed the engine, but I'm going to show you the process on it anyway. And I also want to do the horns, okay? So let's get into this. Now, once you have your printer, you're going to need some software. Software is called a slicer, okay? There's a few different programs out there on the market. Some printers are kind of restricted and you have to use their particular slicer software. Other ones are more open source and you can use all kinds of different slicers. So what I'm going to do first of all is my Haygears printer has a tendency to print things more accurately when it comes to the dimensions. So when I have parts that need to be assembled, the Haygears one really just does a better job at making sure everything is accurate when it comes to doing that. Because sometimes what happens in different printers, you'll have something that's, for example, supposed to be 10 millimeters long and 5 millimeters tall, and you print it off and it winds up being 10.2 millimeters long and 5.4 millimeters tall. I believe the term is blooming. It just kind of swells a little bit. The dimensional accuracy is not that great, and that seems to be, it happens quite often. And that's kind of the difficult part with resin printing, is you have to dial in your resin settings, and that's where some people go, oh, this is too complicated, I don't know what I'm doing. That's where things like the Haygears printer, the Reflex, really shines, because it is, although it's a little more expensive than other printers, it is really user-friendly as far as beginners go, and who just starting out and don't want to play with all these different settings. Guys who are more advanced and they want to play with those settings and really tweak everything, and they get some enjoyment out of that, setting it all up and doing all the settings and just really perfecting it. Yeah, the Haygears isn't for you if that's what you want. But if you just want to kind of set it and forget it kind of thing, I do recommend the Haygears printer. I do like it a lot, and when it comes to things that I want dimensionally accurate, I go for them. I'm going into my Haygears. So I'll show you a couple things. Like, for example, I have this Xenoborg. So it's the alien from Aliens, obviously, except it's more of a well, he's more of a Borg, like a cyborg, and so it's more metal. And obviously, I have already painted this. I did not print this in black resin. He was gray, and you can see. Let me change the camera so I'll show you here. Detail. Okay, so yeah, detail. This is something that you're going to get with resin printing. You're going to get detail kind of unmatched. You can't really get detail that's nice and smooth and crisp like this with a filament printer. Okay, so this guy's printed out in multiple parts. His body, his head, his arms, his legs, his tail. I believe even these two things on the back here. They're all separate pieces, and they're all glued together. Okay, so I needed them to be accurate to be able to put the peg in the hole. I have found that when I have some kind of a figure and I need to assemble it, my Saturn doesn't always do that, and I wind up having to either trim away the peg or something like that for it to fit in the hole, and that happens, right? So there's that. Now something that's printed in one piece, you don't really have to worry about that. Such as my, this is a Hyundai Ioniq 5. This is printed in one solid piece. And so dimensional accuracy is not that important because I don't have a bunch of parts that I need to assemble. So I just chose my Saturn and printed this one. So there's that. So you choose what you pick your poison kind of thing. Anyway, so we're going to do, I'm going to show you the process for, so printing the 440 engine. I'm going to put a 446 pack engine in it. So I'll switch to my slicer and I'll show you the process on getting the engine set up and how we're going to take a look at this, okay? So let me switch this over and we'll take a look. Okay, so this is kind of the front page of my slicing software. This happens to be the Blueprint software by Haygears. You don't have to use this one, but you kind of do, because Haygears likes to kind of lock you into their stuff. This is going to save it in a particular file format that the printer recognizes, and that's why you have to use their software. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to maximize my screen here so I can see everything. I'm going to go new, local project, and we need to figure out, so my printer is the Ultracraft Reflex RS, so I need to choose that printer. I have the pulsing release module, so I'm going to select that. My application, I only have one selection here, so I'm going to do that. And then it opens up all these different resins, okay, that you can use. Now, Haygears has these pre-selected settings depending on what resin you're using. This is where people kind of get lost with the Haygears and they don't like it. So because they want you to use their own resins, and I have their resin. I have the PAF 10. They've got weird names: PAU11, PAH, PARP, and all that stuff. All these things, and they all stand for something. The PAF, the FPAF, F is for flexible, and that's the resin I have. I like the fact that it's got some flex to it, okay? And then we're going to choose our layer thickness. 50 microns is kind of standard, but as you get to 50, you get a little bit, you can start seeing some of the layer lines a little bit. I prefer the 30 when I want to have detail. Makes the lines a little bit smaller. So we then click that and we click apply, and it's going to open up our screen and it's going to tell me to pick a file to drop and drag or to import. So I'm going to find my engine in my folder, so I need to find this here. Let me find it here. I believe I have a folder called engines. Maybe I don't. C, D, F. No, maybe not. I have to go into cars. No, it's in car parts. Car parts has engines. Dodge 440 Magnum right there. Okay, so I'm going to select all of these and we're going to import. Okay, and it's going to start putting all the pieces down on the plate. Okay, now they have the size of the plate. This is accurate to the size that you actually have on the machine. And as you can see, it's putting pieces off to the side because we've got too many pieces that are going to fit on one plate. Okay, so with the Blueprint software, we got this plus symbol here, and we can hit that and it adds a second plate. And then I can select one of these parts, like this engine block, and move it over here. And move this one over here too. Okay, so that we don't miss our parts. We don't miss anything. Got a valve cover over here that's doesn't know where its home is. So I have a lot of parts on this thing. We've got, seems to be a few things that are duplicates, such as this valve cover here, this style. If I zoom in, you can see that it's just a generic one, and then we've got one over here. It's a Mopar, a Mopar style. Well, that one's a much nicer one. So I'm going to select this one and I'm going to hit delete. So I'm going to grab my keyboard. We're going to hit delete and we're going to get rid of that. Same with this one, we don't need that. Exhaust manifolds. Well, I want to use the exhausts out of the kit, so I don't need to print the exhaust manifolds. I'm going to get rid of those. Okay, and we have two more over here. Don't need those. Now I also have the option, I can either print the block without the heads and it's just a bare block, or I can print the block with the heads and the top plate across there and the timing chain cover. So I don't need this block because I have this one already. So bye-bye. Alright, now if I wanted, you can go through the process of putting this on top of this and making it one piece also, but we're not going to go over that today. Okay, what we're doing is we're just going over the things that we need. Now we also have the heads, and these heads actually have the spark plugs in them too, but since the engine block already has the heads, we don't need them. So there's that, and that one, and that one, and of course this plate that goes in between, don't need that, and don't need that head. Now there's our air cleaner. Do we need the air cleaner? No, because I'm going to be going with a 6-pack carburetor setup. This is for a single carburetor. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that air cleaner. And speaking of carburetors, I don't need the carburetor. That's right there, so bye-bye. So we're already at a point where we can probably fit everything on the one plate, and we don't need two plates anymore. Oh yes, intake manifold. Well, since we're going with a 6-pack setup, we don't need this intake because this is for a single carburetor, so bye-bye. It looks like we've got two water pumps. Why do we have two water pumps? They look very similar. One has bolts and the other doesn't. For some reason the bolts on this one are not attached, but on this one they are. I think because our alternator is supposed to attach. So we have an option of having our alternator, you know, kind of there. That kind of thing. If I select move over here, I can kind of line this up and see how it would look. Kind of like that. So you can kind of do this in your software. Now I could actually print these as one piece if I really wanted to, rather than gluing it. That's another option you have. Sometimes you can put two pieces together in the software and you don't have to worry about gluing things together. Now the reason why they're red is because the software is telling me I have pieces that are colliding, right? They're touching each other, and so it's saying, hey, do you really want this? Because these two are going to print in one piece now. Do you really want it that way? So that's up to you. In this case, I could leave them like that, which means I don't need this one, right? We'll get rid of that. Bing. Now I could actually say, because there's like a hole here where that one bolt is missing, I could use this one to say, hey, there's a bolt there, and because I'm not sure what that bolt is actually for, I could line it up on those. So let's do that. Okay, let's get rid of this one. We're going to move this guy over. Oops. Sometimes clicking on the mouse can be tricky. So I'm going to move him over. Let's get him lined up as close as I can. See, now they've gone red because it's touching. I'll zoom in close so I can really get in tight here and see how this is going to look. Right up against where that bolt would be there. That's good. Now our height. We're going to do the height. Get it up. right about there. And lined up a little bit better here. There we go. If you're not that good with the mouse, you can always click over here on these numbers and you can really get your precision. So there we go. So now we got the bolt head there, and that looks a lot more accurate and precise as to where it would go. In fact, it's not quite, I don't have it quite perfect. It's close, but pretty close. Okay, I could print it like that. Another thing you could do if you wanted with your pulleys, you could put the pulleys on them too. All up to you, okay? Okay, so we don't need the front timing cover. That's already on the engine block. Let's get rid of that. Flywheel. Flywheel is a detail that's really up to you. If you're going to have the engine printing on an engine stand or something like that, then the flywheel would be a nice detail. But we're going to be putting it on a transmission, so we don't need that. Bing, bye-bye. Okay. Here's our... I'm not sure what this piece is. What is this piece? It's the front cover. I believe it's for the water pump. I believe that's for the water pump. Here's our starter. Fan is for the oil. I believe that's for the oil filter. Anyway, let's go over to our other plate and let's remove our parts over here. Okay, so everything is on one plate, so we don't need the second plate now. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Now that we have everything on the plate, we want to make sure that nothing is touching except these two parts which we want to touch. And we got to figure out orientation. Okay, orientation is another important factor in 3D printing. How everything is sitting on the plate. There's a couple of reasons why you need to worry about that. One reason is there's going to be supports holding these things onto the plate. Okay, so you need to think where the supports are going to be attached. The supports go from the plate up to the thing. I'm going to select one part here. I'm just going to pick one valve cover. And we're going to show you the difference. So I'm going to have this one, and we're going to rotate this one. We're going to put him up like this, okay? Just on a big crazy angle like that, okay? And this one we're going to leave down. And I'm going to show you, we'll move the oil pan out of the way here. I'm going to show you the difference in what the supports do. If I click on this one, or let's start with this one. There's a basic one. It's lying flat on the thing, just like this. And I go up to the top and I click on support. And I'm going to do auto supports. And go generate. It's going to automatically lift this up a certain height. Whatever height I've got it set to. I currently have it set at 5 millimeters. And it's automatically added all of these supports to the bottom. This is all based on how it needs to keep it so that it will print. Okay, so that's that one. Now if I look at this one, I click on this guy and I generate, you're going to lift it up automatically and it's going to put a whole bunch of supports underneath it like that. Just like that. Now you can do manual supports, which a lot of people do. If I do manual supports, I'm going to select a model, hit manual. Goes to a different screen. See, now it's gotten rid of every other thing on the plate just to show me only this one, so I can go and add some supports. I can go like this and just go bing, 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 and it just automatically adds them all the way along there. Okay, move that over to this side, go bing, 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 bing. Now I don't have to do this, but I'm just showing you guys this is how you do your supports. Okay, there's all kinds of different little factors and things you can do with supports. If you're new to this and you've never done it before, then you can just hit auto supports and call it done. Okay, So we've got our new supports on there, okay? And it all depends on how you have it oriented, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all supports, okay, on this guy. Ask me if I'm sure. Yes, I am. And I'm going to do the same with this guy. Yes, I am. And the reason I'm doing that is because we don't need to angle this up crazy like this. The other reason why you want to angle things up is because of something called pull force. When you have something that's lying down flat, it creates a lot of pull force when the build plate is trying to pull off of the bottom of the vat, okay? And so you need to make sure you want to minimize that pull force. Obviously, a great big flat piece is harder to pull off of than something that's very small and on an angle. So that's why you'll see things on angles all the time. Now, I don't need to quite do this one on that particular angle, so I'm just going to rotate this down a little bit. And what I like to do is I'll rotate it on the other axis also, so it's kind of like this. Okay, and I'll do the same thing with this guy. Do that a little bit. He's a little bit rotated, and do that. Okay, I'll rotate him up a little bit more. Just like that, okay? Things like these guys, like say our distributor, I don't want a whole bunch of supports going along one edge of this distributor, so I'm going to rotate him almost straight up. I don't want to do quite straight up, but just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Here's our starter motor. So I want to put this on the flat edge and contradict myself a little bit. Because this is so small, I want it on the flat edge. It's okay to do the flat edge when it's small. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's not going to have any supports on the actual starter itself, right? It's just going to be on the very bottom of it. And so that's going to be like that. So we'll do that with my pulley. Okay, like this. With our crank pulley, same thing. Get that straight up, because you think about it, there's going to be supports on the back edge of our balancer underneath here. And that doesn't matter, you're not going to see them, right? This guy here, let's put him more on his back edge, a little bit like that. There we go. What else we got? We've got this here. Bing. We got our actual oil filter. Whoops. Oil filter. Zing. Just like that. This pulley. Like that. Now we have our fan blade. Let's just move. Let's take this guy and make him like this. And I don't want this straight edge going along there. I want this more like this. This shaft, I believe, is supposed to go up from the oil pan into the engine block. There's a hole there, but we don't need it. This is an unnecessary part. So let's get rid of that. This guy, well, I think that's a fuel pump actually, or something like that. Let's just put him like this. Now the engine block. The engine block is one of those things. Do I want supports on the bottom of it? I might have a bunch of supports going up on the sides of the block that I don't really want. So I'm going to rotate the block onto its back, like this. But not 90 degrees, because it's that's kind of a big area. I'll show you. We can do this with this slider bar down here. You can see what every layer is going to be like. See? So if I leave the oil pan right now, it needs to print that big area all at once. Don't like that, right? Because we slowly go up, you take a look at our engine block and see the white is that particular layer that's going to be printing. Okay? So depending on how you have it all going, it's going to depend on how big of an area. Look at the big area on the oil pan over here. We don't want that. Okay, we need to fix that. And we go up like this, all the way up, up, and done. Okay, so we need to fix this oil pan. Oil pan needs to be rotated. I'm going to flip this over so that we don't get any supports. All the supports will be on the inside of the oil pan, which is not going to be seen. And then we're going to tilt this up like so, and we'll just give it a little bit of a rotate on this axis too. Okay, so we've got that. Now when I slide this bar down, you see that oil pan cross section as we get to it. That is much, much smaller of a cross section, and that's going to be a lot less pull when that build plate is trying to pull up. Okay, so the other thing we can do next is we can select all of them. I'll hold down my control button, select every part, and we can do the supports all at once. Just like this, go to support and auto and generate. And it's going to do them all at once. And come on, engine block, you can do it. It's processing. This isn't the fastest software out there, but it is good. You can see the support that's created for the drain bolt on the oil pan because of the angle we have. I'm not sure why we've got a hole in the bottom of the oil pan here, but no bolt. But that's the way it is. There's our supports for the engine block. See, there's a lot of supports. Now, as you can see, we've got our placement of everything is a little bit off because that's why we've gone, see, these are red because that's outside the build plate. So we just need to move things around a little bit, get them inside the build plate. It doesn't matter if you've got supports that are like going over each other. Like if I move this guy's going to be really small and I would not like to lose him, so I can actually do this. And so his supports will print with those supports and actually kind of make the supports as one piece and keep it held together for you. That helps a little bit. Okay, I like to do that. So we do this. You don't want the supports for this to actually intersect with the part. You don't want to do this. We don't want to do that, okay? But moving the support base, or raft as they call it, moving that so it touches, that's perfectly fine, right? Okay, let's move our valve covers over, like this. Let's move this pulley. I'm actually going to rotate this guy, this. Now, you can only rotate, now that the supports are on, you can only rotate flat, okay? If I try to rotate at a different angle, then what happens is it's going to warn me that the supports will have to be deleted. So do this, and let's move our engine block up over here. And there we go. We've got everything on the plate now. Alright, so the next process would be to hit slice. That creates a slice file that the printer's going to recognize. Okay? Now, this process on Blueprint Studios does take a long time. Okay? And so I'm not going to go through that process with you because it does take quite a while for that. Alright? So that is that. So what I'm going to do is, that's basically the whole process with the software, okay? So that is done and you hit slice, you send it to the printer, and then depending on your printer, sometimes you can print remotely. You can just hit print on the software. Other printers, you actually have to physically go to the printer, go on the little screen and hit print, right? That's the case with the HeyGears. HeyGears doesn't print remotely. You send the file to the printer, then you go to the printer, make sure you've got resin in there and all that stuff and all that funky stuff, and you hit print on the screen. And that's what I did with my engine. And so I have all my engine parts in my little tray here. Okay, so there's the engine block. Here, I'll change the camera so you can get a little bit better picture, okay? Okay, so here's our engine parts. So I got my cylinder block and heads here, and you can see the detail is really nice. I've got the holes drilled out for the spark plugs, wires. There's my timing cover, okay, underneath the oil pan. You can see I've left the supports on the inside of the block because, well, they're not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter. Okay, here's our little fan blade right here. Tiny little fan blade. Okay, there's the oil pan. Here's my intake manifold with the 6 carburetors. It's going to have 6 carburetors on it, or not 6, 3 carburetors on it. Okay, I've pre-wired my distributor with distributor wires, and it's blurry. It doesn't want to focus on that part only. Maybe if I do this, you can see. Okay, yeah, there's all our engine parts. These need to be assembled. There's my carburetors in here, my 2-barrel carburetors. I did do the exhaust manifolds because I wasn't sure if I was going to use these ones or the ones out of the kit, so I printed them anyway. Yeah, so there's your engine parts. And that's another thing you need to think of now that I'm just talking about it. When it comes to scaling, when you have your file for your stuff, you have to think about the size of how it's going to come out, and if it's going to fit your kit. I have made the mistake of assuming the size of the parts that are in the file are actually the proper size that I need to print. Here's an example. Here's an example of what happens when you don't pay attention to the size. Okay. I printed off this Ford Predator engine for a Shelby, a new Shelby GT500 Mustang. I printed this off. Okay, here's our valve covers. Printed this off so that I could put a Predator engine in an older Mustang. Okay. Now it came out really nice. Let's change the camera. I'll even show you here. Okay. It came out really nice. Get it to focus. Yeah. You can see the Cobra on the top of the supercharger. Yeah, lots of detail. It's very nice. Okay. Looks really good. Nice engine. There's only one problem. It's supposed to be this big. This is the size I need. And this is what I got. Okay. So that's the problem. You need to make sure your scale is correct. Okay. And I even did it with that 440 engine. I printed it off thinking, okay, I bought it off of Cults 3D website. And I believe the guy's name is on there is Motobus, Motobas. He makes lots of different engines and stuff like that for cars in 1/25 scale or 124, 125, whatever. He makes all those, and I assumed his file would be perfect size. No, they're way too big. Way too big. So I had to scale it down. So I grabbed the engine out of the kit. I measured how long the engine was, and so I scaled this one down to be that size. Of course, this is kind of cool. I could use this as a display engine, just, you know, sitting on a stand or something like that. But other than that, it's useless to me. That ain't gonna fit in any of my model kits. So, yeah, scale is important. You need it to be the size that you need, right? And fortunately with the slicer, you can just, everything all at once, you can scale it down perfectly, everything will match. Yes, so I wanted to just go through that process with you guys. Yeah, that's where this video is going to end. I wanted to kind of bring you along on my little journey of 3D printing, show you a bit of the process and that kind of stuff. And I hopefully this kind of maybe answers a few questions. Of course, if you do have questions, I invite you, please put comments down below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. I want to thank you guys for coming along with me, and thank you for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, you can subscribe and check out my links down below and see all my other stuff that I get involved with. Yeah, anyway guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.